Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 29th of August of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And as first we're going to start as usually with Robotyne, with the battle for Robotyne, with Robotyne Flower or Bradley Square as you wish. This battle gets its final phase, and currently the Ukrainians stopped any offensive operation, any attempts to develop their positions in the vicinity of the settlement. Basically, as a result of fierce clashes in this area, the Ukrainians managed to establish final control over the settlement. They captured the city, they forced the Russians to step back, but currently the Ukrainians don't have any power, any force, manpower, or even possibilities to continue advancing further to the south. And the main reason of that is the Russian defense belt that located on the south, on the west, and the southeast of the settlement. For example, this is the photo of the satellite of the Russian positions. This photo is geolocated. This is the Russian trenches and the Russian fortifications that located on the south of Robotyne. As you can see, this is a very powerful stronghold that highly unlikely the Ukrainians have power to capture today, tomorrow, or even by the end of September. And this fortification is located in this area, and the Russians do have possibilities to supply and support their forces from this settlement that located in the south by the name of Novoprokopovka, and from the west of the trenches, and of course from the east as well. So this is a very powerful defense belt that Ukrainians don't have power to capture. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published the video today how they tried to establish control over the southern fortifications. They tried to suppress the Russian forces with artillery attacks, with the cluster rounds. As you can see one more time on the video, the level of Russian fortifications, the power of the stronghold, and possibly we understand that Ukrainians don't have even a single chances to continue their offensive, or let's say this is not going to be an easy job for them. So basically, because of that, the Ukrainians took a decision to change their focus and not to risk and not to continue any attempts to attack further to the south without developing their positions and without developing their situation on the base of Robotyne Flower. And we're talking about the settlement by the name of Novopokrovka, this one. For example, today at least two different Ukrainian sources published three videos in a row from the same area. Those videos weren't geolocated. The only thing that the authors of those videos provided us that these two videos were made in the vicinity of the settlement, how the Ukrainians were storming and attacking the Russian trenches and the Russian positions somewhere in the vicinity of the settlement. So I have added two icons softly, just like to express and to show the opinion of the authors who told us that those videos were made somewhere in this direction. So basically, according to some information that we got from the Ukrainian side, currently they changed their focus. The Ukrainians changed their focus and tried to develop their offensive operation in direction of Novopokrovka. So basically, they tried to develop the northern leaves of the Robotyne Flower, and only after some progress in this area, the Ukrainians will be able to restart their offensive operation further in direction of Verbova and maybe in direction of Novoprokopovka. The Russian sources published very interesting video how they managed to discover and to destroy the Ukrainian D-30 howitzer that the Ukrainians were trying to hide somewhere between Bilogorye and Mala-Takmachka under the bridge, and as a result of Lancet strike, that Ukrainian howitzer was destroyed. The funny thing and the most interesting thing from this video is that Ukrainians some reason took a decision to redeploy their howitzer as close as possible to the combat line. Anyway, we need to adjust the map to show the normal, because the howitzer was there. So basically, as I understand, the Russians don't have control over these fields. Anyway, until the Ukrainians solve the issue with the flanks and the base of Robotyne Flower, we will not see any further offensive operation from the Ukrainian south to the south. The Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours restored some artillery control or counter-artillery duels against the Russian artillery positions. They continue bombing and shelling Verbova, and today we got at least two geolocated videos how the Ukrainians continue attacking, discovering the Russian positions, tracking their ammo depots, the concentration of forces, and after that the Ukrainians bomb and attack the settlement with artillery shells with cluster rounds, and as a result of some of those attacks the Russians had losses in vehicles and infantry and so on. Anyway, if we increase the number of updates since the beginning of August, at least in direction of Verbovo, we see the Ukrainian concentration, we see the Ukrainian plans, and we understand that basically the Ukrainians try to clear the passage before the beginning of another wave of attack in this direction, if the Ukrainians ever are going to start movement, because the autumn is coming and soon the quality of ground is going to be too poor for any offensive operation in this foothold. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 90 soldiers. So we see that activity has been completely reduced, because this is probably the lowest level of loss from the Ukrainian side since the beginning of the Ukrainian greatest counter-offensive operation. Now we're moving further to the South Donetsk area, and today we got another day of complete Russian superiority in artillery. During the previous 24 hours we haven't received even a single video or photo confirmation of Ukrainian drone strikes or artillery strike or something like this, but we continue receiving more and more updates of the Russian artillery superiority, how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in Urozhaina and Staromayorska, how the Russians were trying to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities and not to allow them to concentrate their forces. The Russians continue publishing the videos how they were bombing and attacking with FPV drones the Ukrainian supply trucks that were moving along the roads between Velika Novoselovka and Urozhaina. The Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian concentration of forces and howitzers somewhere in the vicinity of Novodonetsk. Some sources are saying that they are trying to concentrate some forces before the next wave of attack or attempt of attack in direction of Novodonetsk, and the Russians continue destroying the Ukrainian forces among the fields, their supply trucks who bring ammunition and shells and rounds to the artillery systems that Ukrainians try to hide between the forest lines in this direction. So as you can see, no movements from the Ukrainian side, but we see that the Russians have completely captured and got the initiative on this area. I'm not sure that the Ukrainians are going to counterattack, but at least they can try to force the Ukrainians to step back and to turn every single settlement that were captured by the Ukrainians during the previous weeks into an area of a gray zone with a scorched earth. Now we are moving to Donetsk direction. Today we got some updates from the South Donetsk area. The Russians continue develop their artillery superiority on this bridgehead as well. One more time, we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation from the Ukrainian side about any counter-artillery duel in this area. If we increase the number of updates on the Ugledar-Novomikhailivka bridgehead in this area, we see the configuration of Russian strikes. It's even very difficult to calculate the number of artillery strikes, the number of destroyed Ukrainian artillery positions, the number of drone strike, like Z strike from the Russian side, and the number of destroyed armored vehicles from the Ukrainian forces. Very difficult to calculate. As you can see, from the Ukrainian side we got just a few geolocated confirmations of drone strikes with FPV drones when the Ukrainians were trying to attack some abandoned Russian armored vehicles, and just few artillery strikes right in front of Novomikhailivka. When talking about Novomikhailivka, we see that the settlements, that Konstantinovka-Novomikhailivka agglomeration, have been almost reduced till ruins, and the Russians is about to start their own offensive operation in this direction. Today we got another video geolocated confirmation how the Russians discovered another Ukrainian ammo depot or probably concentration of Ukrainian forces, and as a result of artillery or missile strike with Ilmur missile from helicopter, that position was destroyed and Ukraine lost another position where they can hide or concentrate their forces. Furthermore, the Russians published another video how they made a Grad attack with missiles against the coal mine that located on the north of Ugledar. As you can see, this is a very powerful stronghold that Ukrainians still have possibility to use, and even if the Russians are able to capture Ugledar, they still have a lot of problems on the north, so this is not going to be an easy trip if the Russians take a decision to penetrate this defense belt. Anyway, it's better and much more easy for the Russians to attack in direction of Novomikhailivka, Konstantinovka, and to collapse the entire front line and to try to encircle the Ukrainian forces in this area. So using this direction of attack, obviously. Now we're moving further and we're going to talk about the North Donetsk area. I'm talking about the capital of Donetsk, of DPR. And today we got few geolocated videos from the Ukrainian side, and the main geolocations we got today from the foothold between Krasnogorovka and Novobakhmutovka. The Ukrainians, if you remember, a few weeks ago we discussed and we got update from the head of DPR, Denis Pushilin, who reported that as a result of some offensive operation, the Russians managed to develop their positions in the vicinity of this area, but we haven't received even but we didn't receive any single confirmation of that video confirmation of that attack. And today we got probably the first video confirmation of the Russian attempt to attack in direction of Novokalinovo and Keramik. And according to the DPR head, that was a successful attack. But if we take a look at the video that was published by the Ukrainian sources, the Russians sent a small reconnaissance team to the south. They were moving along the railways. As you can see, the Russian forces were located under open sky. They were under control of Ukrainian drones, and just in a second the Ukrainians started bombing and shelling the Russian forces, and as a result of artillery strike, few soldiers were wounded or probably even killed. So it's from this perspective, this operation is very difficult to call it successful, but according to the Russian sources, that operation was successful. Furthermore, the Ukrainians managed to suppress and destroy another Russian artillery system, probably Msta-B or D-20 Howitzer, that was located also somewhere in the forest between Novobakhmutovka and Krasnogorovka. As a result of artillery strike, the Russians lost one artillery system that they were using to support and their forces in Krasnogorovka, Novobakhmutovka, and the Russian forces along the railways. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce clashes on Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost 340 soldiers, 19 armored vehicles. The level of losses, as usual on the Donetsk front line, is very heavy, no matter the situation on other front lines, because of at least two important battles: the Battle of Donetsk, the capital of DPR, and of course Artyomovsk. The Russians also published today a very interesting video how they managed to discover and to destroy the Russian railway trains fully loaded with munition, and the Ukrainians were trying to unload and pack those trains somewhere in the station in the vicinity of Dorozhny, but the Russians managed to discover and to destroy that system. There are at least two important things and very interesting things that we can discuss regarding this video. The first one is that this video was made by the Russian drone, probably of Orlan-10, and as you can see, this railway station is located very deep inside of the Russian-Ukrainian positions, and it's very interesting how the Russians managed to bypass the Ukrainian air defense system, the Ukrainian electronic warfare systems without problems, and to collect the video and to get as much as possible information from this railway station. Probably this drone have been working there since the many days before or something like this. Furthermore, another interesting situation is to calculate the distance between from this position to probably let's call it from Verkhny Toretsk. I don't think that the Russians moved their long-range artillery systems right to the combat line. They need some buffer between combat line and their position, and if we calculate the distance, let's say from Verkhny Toretsk, we see that the Russians attacked that railway station within 50 kilometers with artillery strike, probably with Krasnopol. Significant distance. The Russians do have possibilities to do such effective and successful attacks, and to tell the truth, this is very interesting. Now we are moving further to the Klishchevka area. The Ukrainians, after a small operational pause, relaunched their offensive operation, but let's say the first phase of possible offensive operation that might take place within the next few days. The Ukrainians sent reconnaissance team in direction of Andreevka, trying to understand the positions, trying to understand and discover the Russian artillery positions. The Russians, of course, controlled the entire situation. They attacked the Ukrainian forces, and after that, they allowed the Ukrainians to get as deep as possible. And as soon as the Ukrainians stretched their movement and got very far from their main land, from their main base, the Russians started bombing and shelling, and basically the Russians reduced any possibilities of that reconnaissance team to step back successfully. From the other side, the Ukrainians tried to control and establish some drone control over Kurdyumovka and Zelenopol. So we understand that within the next few days we need to expect more attempts from the Ukrainian side to penetrate this defense belt and to capture these three settlements like Zelenopol, Kurdyumovka and Andreevka, probably within within one attack. On this video we see a very interesting video. The Ukrainians established fire control over the roads in this area. We will not watch this video. According to that video, the Ukrainians were flying with a drone above this territory, and they were launching and bombing the Russian forces infantry with grenades, and I calculated that around 10 soldiers were wounded or even killed during that operation. So, and the Russians couldn't do anything until they managed to discover the Ukrainian drone forces. When talking about the northern flank, the Russians continue clashes, artillery duels, drone strikes, and so on. And today we got, probably for the first time since the beginning of the summer, another Russian artillery strike against the settlement by the name of Grigorievka. As I understand, the Ukrainians tried to accumulate their forces in the settlement before the next attempt to attack in direction of Dubovo-Vasilievka. If you remember, a few days ago, the Ukrainians made probably very successful operation in direction of Zalizyanskaya forest, and as a result of that attack of 30th Mechanized Brigade, the Ukrainians managed to force the Russians to step back. They managed to capture the forest and probably to clear. I'm talking about this forest. Yet I haven't colored the entire area in the Ukraine color. We need more information about that. But the Russians understand the risks and currently started bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions in other settlements like Grigorievka to reduce Ukrainian possibilities and to attack the concentration of their forces and not to allow them to create a critical mass before the next wave of attack in direction to Dubovo-Vasilievka. First, the Russians need to fix the issue in Zalizyanska, and after that they can repel any other attack from any direction. Also we got another video how the Russians discovered the Ukrainian positions somewhere in the vicinity of Bakhmut and made a lot of FPV drone strikes in this area. This video is from Rabotina, not from Rabotina, from the settlement by the name of this one, Chromova, so all the well-known cities in this direction. And the Russians continue controlling the Ukrainians in the vicinity of Fedorovka, Vasyukovka, Razdolovka, where the Ukrainians during the previous months made a lot of attempts to concentrate their forces and to attack the Russians in direction of Solidar and railway station Sol. And all this attack was successful. The Russians discovered the trenches, and as a result of strike, probably the Ukrainians lost another position or some operational warehouse in this direction. Now we're moving to the Kupiansk and Liman front line. When talking about Liman salient, we haven't received almost nothing. Yesterday we got some updates. The day before yesterday, as I promised you, I have updated the map regarding the Kremenaya forest in the vicinity of Kuzminya. The Ukrainians control this area. We got the video yesterday's video of special units Akhmat, how they were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians in this forest, trying to discover their positions, their manpower, and so on. And so that's mean that this part of the forest is at least under Ukraine control. When talking about Kupiansk front line, we also don't have a lot of updates. The Ukrainians continue controlling the Russian positions. They've brought some artillery systems, and we start receiving every single day another video from the Ukrainian side, how they were bombing, and at least they're trying to capture the initiative, or at least to reduce the Russian initiative in this area. As you can see, as a result of another strike, the Russians lost the howitzer. When talking about the area of Sinkovka, today we got probably the second geolocated confirmation from the Russian side. The Russians published the video how they were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Sinkovka. And the most important part of this video, at least there are two important things that I would like to discuss with you. First of all, the Russians were using their famous navigation system, coordination system as I. It's like targeting system. It's called targeting system by the name of I. And we discussed this system a few videos ago. This is a very accurate system that allows the Russians to attack the Ukrainian positions with significant accuracy. And another important thing regarding this attack is that the Russians attacked the Ukrainian positions, the Ukrainian trenches, using TOS flamethrower system. So take just two things: I targeting system plus TOS flamethrower system. I believe that this is probably the denomination of the game changer of the special military operation, to use TOS flamethrower system with a very big distance and to have a very accurate targeting system. And this is the types of weapon that the Russians use in this direction, trying to attack in direction of Kupiansk. But other Russian sources report that during these days, the previous days, the Ukrainians and the Russians managed to stabilize the front line, and currently we can't see any movements on the ground at all. When talking about the global situation in Ukraine, more and more updates we are getting regarding the total mobilization in this area. As we discussed, some local sources published some inside information regarding the official papers, official documents that were signed by the local authorities. And according to information we have, the regions like Chernigov region, this one on the north of Ukraine, Sumy region, Kharkiv area, Dnipropetrovsk area, Nikolaev region, and Odessa region is about to start the total mobilization in these regions. Furthermore, we got another unpleasant update, probably for the Russians. The Ukrainians, we talked a few days ago about the total mobilization, and we were talking that saying that Ukrainians are planning to mobilize another 200,000 soldiers. Today, the Ukrainian sources published that Ukrainians are planning to mobilize another 200,000 soldiers just during the autumn, so during the next 3 months, and by the end of and during the winter and spring of the next year of 2020, the winter of this year and spring of the next, the Ukrainians are planning to mobilize another 300,000 soldiers. So basically, by the April or May of 2024, the Ukrainians are planning to mobilize another 500,000 of Ukrainians, and probably they're going to start, and they're planning to start another mid-grinder in the southern part of Ukraine. And obviously, anyway, the Russians don't have any other option to launch their own mobilization, because we see that initiative currently is in Russian hands, but whether they're able to defeat another 500,000 army of Ukrainians with the current number of forces, I'm not sure. So basically, as I understand, we're going to see mobilization in Russia as well, probably after the Ukrainians announce there is one. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.